Excuse me, sir, were you able to do the welfare check?
I can talk to them and see if the kids are here. If they're not here, I can't.
At the residence that we are supposed to be at to pick up the children. And we are waiting for the officer to come back outside and let us know if the children are inside. Again, we waited 2 hours for a police officer to show up, and he showed up with Miss Priscilla Santiago, and the children were not in the vehicle with her, could possibly be in the house, at her mother's house. So it's where we're at, where visitation is supposed to be at. 1980.
Okay. Now, the owner of the property here, Miss Ash, requested me to give you a criminal trespass warning to not come back on.
I'm Jessie. I have two daughters. I have a 19-year-old and I have a 17-year-old who will be 18 in March. 2.5 years ago, my youngest daughter came to me and she said that she wanted to live with me. And she wanted to wait until summertime before she told her dad because she didn't want the rest of her school year to be messed up. So we waited to tell her dad. And then as soon as she told him, he refused to talk to her. He hung up on her twice. So she returned to his house, and she hasn't been the same since. I've only seen him maybe a handful of times in the past 876 days. The next time that I saw them, they started making comments like, well, we can leave if we want to because we have a car. We're stuck here. We can't go fishing with our uncle, or, it was just things that weren't like them to say, and after that, he started denying visitation. I was waiting for him to show up. In August, it was August 16th, I was waiting for him to show up and they didn't show up. So I called him, my ex, and asked him where the girls were because I had given my oldest a car and she would drive, and she didn't show up. So anyway, he messaged me back and he said via decree, meaning you can come pick them up at my house. So I thought that I felt uncomfortable about that. So I called the civil standby to meet me there. And when we showed up, both of the girls walked outside, and my ex-husband walked outside and stood over them, and the sheriff was standing beside me. And the girls were just like, we don't want to go. We don't want to go. And my ex-husband was like, well, we can't, I'm not going to physically force them if they don't want to go. And actually, I noticed that he had taken the front tires off her car so she couldn't drive. But anyway, his girlfriend was standing behind him in the house yelling at us saying, I want them off my property. And the sheriff said, well, we have to leave. They asked us to leave. So we left, and they wanted the sheriff to stay there and I guess talk to him after we left. So we went and stood by my car and waited for the sheriff to come to us or come talk to us. And he said, well, this is a civil matter. You need to get an attorney and go to court. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know there was a difference between civil and criminal at that time. So I didn't see the girls. That evening also, my ex changed their numbers and refused to give me the new ones for almost 4 months. And after he finally gave me their new numbers, I started receiving messages from the girls' phones. They were threatening messages telling me, drop it or we never want to see you again. If you don't drop it, then we're not going to come over ever again. So we got an attorney, and my attorney said that, well, I want to put some pressure on your ex. And I was like, well, he's not going to follow the orders. He's like, well, let's put some pressure on him. I didn't realize this, but it was just to drag it out some more. So anyway, we finally got a court date. It was December 6th. And it was already predetermined before I went into that courtroom who was going to win and who was going to lose, because it was either the girls were going to testify against me, or I settle with counseling. I didn't want the girls to have to get up there and choose between their parents. And actually, I have my transcript of what the judge said. He said that I know some of the allegations that have been alleged, and I've got to tell you, I do this a lot, meaning that somebody had talked to him about some allegations that I didn't even know what they were. I didn't even know that they had a conversation. But he did say that he knew some of the allegations that had been alleged. And the thing that can get bad consequences is dragging your children into the fight between the two of you. If I find that either of you have tried to use your children in a way in the fight between the two of you, whatever that may be, that is the kind of thing that'll get bad consequences. Your children deserve to have a relationship with their father. They deserve to have a relationship with their mother. They deserve it. And if it ever comes to a point where that should not happen, and I've got to tell you, as long as the children are under 18, I make that decision. I took that as kind of a threat, as the judge telling me that as long as the girls are under 18, he makes the decision whether they have a relationship with us or not. It made me feel uncomfortable. It made me feel like he just said that don't drag your children into the middle of it, and then he turns around and does that. So anyway, I settled with a month's worth of counseling, four sessions, and then parenting time was supposed to start up again. Well, the 1 month turned into 3 months because it took a month and a half to get into the first session. The first session, my ex-husband showed up with the girls, and he sat in the waiting room, across the waiting room, and he sat there, and I didn't get to speak to the girls. He sat there and he kept them busy playing with them on their phones. Anyway, the counselor called us back, and I think I was about back there for maybe 15 minutes, and then she said, well, I need to talk to the girls. So I went back out and sat in the waiting room for another 20 minutes. And then I see them come and walk out of her office, and then my ex-husband comes back in the waiting room, stands in between us, so I was unable to say goodbye to them. So anyway, after 3 months, visitation didn't start up again. He just he didn't follow the orders. He wanted to give me the runaround. He wanted to try to set up dinners or lunches or whatever. Well, the girls will meet you here, but you and only you can go. Nobody else can go, and it has to be at this time. So he was interfering with my time, with our time. The girls had to do what he was telling them to do too. I mean, I don't even know if that's what they wanted to do. But they never showed up anyway. The dinners, they never showed up. I noticed the alienation years and years ago. I just didn't know there was a name for it. Like the girls would get birthday presents or Christmas presents, and they'd want to take them home because it was new to them. Well, they would take it home, and Dad's rule was if it comes to my house, it doesn't go back to Mom's. And I just couldn't keep their toys because they were brand new and they wanted them. And so, I let them take them. They started asking me questions later on when they got in their early teens, like, well, Dad said that you left us because you didn't want us anymore. And I said, no, that's not why I left. And I was like, do you really think that? And they were like, well, no, but we don't like him saying that. And I said, well, did you tell him that you didn't like him saying that? And then my oldest, Lexi, she She said that, yeah, Dad used to crack jokes about you when we were younger. We didn't understand what he was doing, so we would make fun of you too until we got old enough to realize that it wasn't right. So I guess they would walk away or whatever whenever he was making fun of me and joking about me, and they didn't like it. For Thanksgiving, the first Thanksgiving that I was denied, he sent me a message, and it said, "You and I know the girls are going to refuse to go to your house today. I will not physically force them into the car, but they have a solution to meet with you and only you at Brahms at 7 o'clock tonight. And if it all goes well, they said they will probably do the same tomorrow. They're trying to work with you to help solve the issues between the three of you." This was a message from him telling me what I need to do to see my girls. I messaged the girls. I had finally gotten their numbers at that time. I messaged them and I asked them if they wanted to go do something in Amarillo. I said, "Do you want to go skating? Do you want to go eat at your favorite restaurant? Do you want to go shopping? It's almost Christmas time." And they ignored me. They didn't want to do that. Well, the next day he messaged me again. He said, "Well, you refused because it's not your way." I mean, I was trying to do something they wanted to do, something that I knew that we would all enjoy, instead of going and sitting at a fast food restaurant for 30 minutes. But anyway, he continued to deny visitation after that. And I was told that I would be allowed to see the girls if I agreed to limited visitation, or don't get to see them at all. It was another month till our next hearing, and I wanted to see the girls, and they needed to see me. I mean, because it had been almost 10 months at that time. So I agreed to this agreement, and apparently there was a hearing that I didn't know about for these orders, because it said that the record was waived. The parties waived the record, and the judge agreed. And how can I waive a record if I don't even know there's a hearing? So I don't know what was said again. My due process rights were violated. But as much as my ex-husband told me that the girls never wanted to see me again, that they were mad at me, that anyway, they showed up for the limited time, and we enjoyed our time. It was like the 10 months, we had a wonderful time. We went walking. It was right when COVID started. We went walking around downtown, and we just enjoyed it. So, well, it's time to go to the hearing a month later. And I either have to settle again, or their girls are going to testify against me. So it was a setup, even though the judge said that if I find that either one of you put the girls in the middle, there will be bad consequences. Well, I didn't get any bad consequences for trying to put the girls in the middle, so I had to settle. The next day was my weekend. It was the first overnight that I'd had in 10 months. We had a great time. We had a cookout. We played games. We swam. And we just had a good time. And my oldest daughter had to leave early because she had to go to work, and she hugged me. She told me she loved me, and she told me she'd see me later. She was supposed to graduate a week later, or 2 weeks later. And we had discussed having a pool party for her. She likes to swim. So anyway, I took Haven to the agreed pickup location and dropped her off, and I told her I'd see her in 2 weeks. Well, she gets, I know a week later, she has their graduation parade. And I know that they're going to get 10 tickets apiece, or 10 tickets for graduation because COVID. And I messaged my ex and I asked him, are you going to save tickets for my parents, for us? And he said, well, I don't know. Lexi's already given them out. I don't know who she's giving them to. So later I got a message from her phone saying, I've got one ticket saved especially for you. I wouldn't let anybody else have it. And it didn't sound like her. That's not something that she'd say. Backroom negotiations, but the judge decided that he wasn't going to enforce the orders, or agreed orders, for the 17-year-old, my oldest. So what was the point of getting those orders if he wasn't going to enforce them? He was just engaging in the alienation. He was just helping my ex alienate my daughters from me, along with the attorney that wanted to limit my time for no reason except to be cruel. I'm supposed to get the girls for the month of July. So anyway, I had bought them new phones to use at my house due to my ex tracking us and questioning everywhere we went. If one of the girls stayed at my house and the other one went shopping with me or something, he would call and ask why they weren't together, and it was just better to get them new phones. I mean, because my oldest daughter, she was taking her boyfriend home. It was close to midnight. I knew where she was going. It was about a 15-minute drive there, a 15-minute drive back. I knew where she was at. Well, after, about a certain amount of time, she didn't show up. So I got worried. So eventually I ended up calling her boyfriend and asking if Lexi had left yet. If not, just I was worried about her. So he said that her dad had got a hold of her and wanted her to stop by his house at midnight. He tracked her. So anyway, I messaged him and I said, is Lexi on her way back? And he said, yeah, she's on so-and-so street. So anyway, she pulls up. She slams her door and she comes in crying because she had gotten in trouble for hanging out with her boyfriend because she didn't ask her dad's permission. Well, I gave her permission to hang out with him that late. I knew where she was. I knew what she was doing. Well, skip ahead to July 1st. So I had the new phones, and I messaged him to make sure that he was going to keep his phones at his house. And anyway, the girls showed up, and as soon as they got here, their dad's phones rang. And I was like, I thought I told you to leave those at your dad's. Well, there are phones. We don't have to. We want to keep them. This argument went on for about 2.5 hours. I finally called my parents over here to help de-escalate the situation because they weren't going to give them up. My ex kept calling and texting them, and he wasn't helping the situation. They just didn't want to mind me. They just wanted to undermine me and tell me they didn't have to listen to me because really it was my ex that wanted them to keep the phone so he could see what we were doing for the whole month of July. Well, anyway, I finally got the phones away from them and I put them up and things started to settle down. And my parents left and we were going to go swimming, and anyway, around 9:45, my ex's girlfriend shows up on my front doorstep to pick up the phones unannounced. And my youngest goes out there and talks to her a little bit. I have my door cam on because I'm going to listen a little bit. Anyway, she whispers to my daughter and she says, it'd be nice if your mother treated you right, huh? Did you make the call? Did you make the call to the cops? You were supposed to call the cops. They were on their way over here, don't you remember? And then Haven goes, the cops were? And she goes, yeah, you were supposed to call them, remember? Anyway, I opened the door and I handed her the phones and I said, I hope this is the last of the interference. And she said, no, it's not going to be. And she goes, when you grow up, that's when it'll be the end of it. So I walk inside and she yells at Haven. She says, tell your mother the interference isn't going to stop. I mean, it's interference right there. I mean, she said she was going to do it and she kept her promise. So anyway, the girls stayed the whole month, my ex texted them the whole time. Like, they were watching a movie and he's like, well, what are you doing? We're watching a movie. Is it over yet? What are y'all doing? Like, at one point I was going to take them to go get haircuts, and they messaged her and said, so I'm not going to get to take you to get your haircut this year? Oh no. Well, fine. I guess I'll just go back to work. Call me later. There was only 2 times that the sheriff came out, the civil standby came out. And the third time I called, they said that they're not going to come out anymore. Next time I call, they're not going to come out. So I didn't want to go to their front door. My attorney kept telling me, you have to go to the front door, or the judge isn't going to find them in contempt. And I didn't want to. I didn't feel comfortable. So I would pull up and park in the front. And used to, the girls would always be standing outside waiting in the driveway when I pulled up. But not anymore. I would pull up and I would sit there for only about 5 minutes. And the girls would walk out and then right back in giggling. And their dad was encouraging this behavior. He thought it was funny. They thought it was funny that I would drive 15 minutes to get there and sit and wait for 10 minutes, and then the girls to do that. And I mean, this went on for months. And at one point, my attorney kept saying, you need to go to the door. And I said, I don't feel comfortable. And I think it was finally the opposing counsel that told my attorney, it's really not safe for her to go to the door. So he stopped asking me to go to the door. There was one incident. We finally got back into court in May of 2020 for our agreement. The girl showed up that weekend, and after that, he started denying visitation after that and frustrating it. And he knew he was, well, the orders finally got filed on August, in the middle of August. So the next day I went to go file an enforcement with a new attorney. And he told me that it would be a couple days and then he'd have a court date, and he'd let me know. Well, 4 weeks passed. I didn't hear anything. Kept trying to call him and he wouldn't respond. So finally set an appointment to go see him. And he calls the court coordinator and she says, oh, I forgot. So anyway, they set a court date for another 5 weeks. So it's another 5 weeks before we get into court. A citation was, two citations had been issued. One back in August, but it never got sent out. And then there was one in September when I met him in his office, and it didn't get sent out till October 6th. And it didn't get served on my ex until the 9th, and it didn't get filed till the 13th of October. The hearing was on the 15th. Anyway, opposing counsel asked for a continuance a day before the hearing, so it was continued. So 5 days later, she files a motion to modify, and then the next day she asked for a TRO with false allegations of abuse. A hearing set 7 days after that. I mean, how obvious is it? A week before the hearing that she asked for a continuance, she silver bullets me. So she gets her ex parte communication. I actually have a recording of my attorney calling opposing counsel's office, and the secretary answers the phone and says, well, Bridget just got off the phone with Judge Messer just right before we talked to you. So that made me think, were they talking before I got here? I mean, what's going on, So kind of got suspicious about that. I mean, I don't really trust the attorneys now anyway, because I just feel like I've been railroaded this whole time. Anyway, the hearing's on the 27th of October, and the hearing starts, and we go through 58 violations. 58. He admits to every single one, and he lies. He says that, oh yeah, he encourages the girls to come see me, But then he turns around and says that he's protecting them from the emotional and physical abuse that happens at my house, which there's no evidence because it never happened. Well, they call Haven to testify. That she testifies in chambers off the record. There's no record of her testifying. She was a tainted witness because she didn't have her own representation. His counsel or his attorney was the one that was talking to her. So anyway, she testifies off the record. I don't know what she says, but the judge comes back on and says that he's going to temporarily suspend my visitation and that he's going to take all the contempt charges along with attorney's fees under advisement, but he's going to suspend my visitation. I hadn't seen my daughters in over a year at this time. Right. During the first counseling session, the girlfriend walked in with my daughter and sat in between us. And actually, I get on my phone and I text my husband and I tell him, can you call the phone office and ask them to have her leave? Because I'm very uncomfortable with her in here. And so he did, and they said, well, they're not going to ask her to leave. So when the counselor finally comes and gets us, I ask him, can I have a minute before Haven comes back? And I said, well, here's the problem right here. You see, she's sitting right there. I can't speak to my daughter. You think that she's going to let me speak to her here? You think she's going to let me speak to her anywhere else? Well, he had already been influenced by my ex and opposing counsel, so he didn't really listen to anything I said. He validated the child's feelings and whatever they had told him about me. I think it was a setup. So they didn't have to be there. So anyway, the judge is on vacation for the next 2 weeks before our next hearing. So anyway, skip ahead to the final. Both my daughters testify against me. And my oldest actually says that their dad was mad at Haven, upset with her for wanting to come live with me, and that he was afraid that he was going to lose her, that she never wanted to talk to him again. That was the reason all this happened. And my youngest basically said the same thing. And actually, she was asked about her grandparents. Do you want a relationship with your grandparents? She said, yes, I do. And then she looked over at her dad and said, but I just don't want to deal with it right now. You know, when you got an opposing counsel and your dad standing over there, you can't really say what you want to say. So anyway, at that hearing, the judge, he ordered me to have dinner visits once a week for 2 months. And then I get to step up to meeting her at the mall, which is an hour away, for 4 hours every Saturday for 2 months. Nobody's allowed at the mall or the restaurants, not my parents, not my husband. She can't rebond with her grandparents that she hadn't seen in 2 years, or, you know. After that, I get to step up to having 1 overnight visits twice a month. But my husband has to leave his house in order for me to have overnights. To leave his house. And I have to complete the step up program before I can move on to the next. So she's not allowed to see me until I complete the step up program. And actually during the hearing, or skip ahead, we had to have a clarification hearing because the orders weren't entered, and this was in August of this year, which was our final was in June. This was August. And we tried to do reconsideration, and the judge wasn't going to hear it. Actually, my ex-husband pulled my daughter out of school, and she got to sit there and listen to the judge and the opposing counsel and her dad bully me during this hearing. While she sat there and watched, actually, we asked her to leave, and the judge said, I'm not going to ask her to leave. She's 17. What can I do? I don't have authority to make her leave. So anyway, he's not going to reconsider. I actually had COVID during that hearing. It was over Zoom. And so it was going to be another 2 weeks before I could start the step-up program. I tried to do Zoom calls, and the attorneys weren't going to cooperate trying to do that. And it's just opposing counsel. Just I found out that she was having ex parte, her secretary was having ex parte communications with the court coordinator. Bad mouthing me, telling lies, saying that I didn't do this, or that I wanted to skip ahead to do this, and I needed to do the step up program. They get to know you visitation before I moved on to anything else. I mean, well, why are all these people interfering with my relationship? I don't understand it. Every single one of them, the judge, the counselors, the attorneys, they're all enabling abuse of my daughters. They're standing in the way of me having a relationship with my daughters. Why? I don't understand. Why these people want to interfere? I mean, what are they getting out of it? Do they enjoy it? I mean, I know that they're getting money, but maybe, you know, their kids should be taken away. You know, maybe they should miss about 3 Christmases or birthdays or Thanksgivings and see what it's like. Because they get to go home every night and have dinner with their families. I don't get to come home and I don't get to see my kids. I can't even call them. But anyway, I haven't seen my daughters in 876 days. And the judge refuses to help me. He had 58 state jail felonies that he admitted to. And I lost my visitation. I lost my rights as a parent.
Last time I calculated six incident reports, okay? I talked to our internal affairs lieutenant. He said, man, he goes, make sure an offense report's done. That way we can get this started because it's a court issue. I told you that last time. Yeah. It's a court issue. Us as Bryan PD, by our policies, by the way we do things, we do not go take kids out of a house, okay? So we just don't, because we're not experts on child care. We can tell you if they're in a dangerous situation, a dangerous home, or something that could kill them or be detrimental, life, limb, eyesight, something like that, okay? But we don't remove kids.
My name's Miranda Coddington, and I've been battling parental alienation for close to 10 years now. First time I felt that something was wrong was when I wasn't getting to see my oldest daughter, Elizabeth. He was withholding her. And my cousin, who is a retired attorney, told me about the word parental alienation and to look into that. And I was really young and naive at the time and didn't know where to begin or even where to start. And that was the beginning of this life that I live now. It's hard to see a young child, especially that young. She was so young, because my youngest was about 2-3 years old when my oldest daughter was, well, if Rose was 3, she was like 6-7 years old. So critical time during a child's life and upbringing to have a mother stripped away, or a father, any parent for that matter. Police got involved at that time, but I didn't know the Texas Penal Code 25.03, to accurately fight during that time. It's a shame because I wish a police officer would have stood up and said something in regards to that. You know, not all of them are actively aware of that type of law that's written, and nor do they have the educational or the emotional cues to correlate with that, especially when a parent has so much emotion behind them. They take it as being aggressive, or that you are the time bomb that they need to watch out for, versus the words that you're trying to say, or when the judge says something, it's law. And so the law that your court orders read, they all seem to think that it's civil, when actuality, it is criminal. And whether a parent is paying child support or not, it's still criminal. It's not right to withhold a child from either parent. It's not right for the grandparents to get involved in that. And I wish there was more education and community leadership, like you yourself have done and pointed out. And it needs to be documented. It needs to be publicly made aware. And for a bio mom like myself, because there's a lot of stepmoms who are involved in this fight. For a bio mom, not only are you shamed for having your children taken away from you, it creates the atmosphere. What did you do wrong for that to happen? Something must be wrong with you. So it's hard for people to get past the mother's rights. It's a mother's state. It's a mother's world when it comes to divorce and child custody, instead of it being more about the children. And the courts and the judges and the attorneys, given this Title 4, or I believe it's 5, I think it's 4, best interest, where they ultimately strip you of your civil rights as a parent and say that, no, the child is ours. We get to have that final say of what's in their best interest. So it creates a really weird dynamic for police officers, for parents, for community to stand up and do anything. And it creates this gray matter that is causing and fueling even more systemic issues within the judicial, local, state, county, federal system. Police I've had so many great police officers throughout the years. And at the same point, just like yesterday morning, I had one officer who wanted to argue the law, and that's not their job. Their job is to enforce it and write the report and go along with their merry way, because ultimately it's very, very taxing on our system to have police officers come out because parents can't get along or they can't follow the court order or the law. I have personally experienced my children being coached to not only CPS, but to the schools and to police officers. They are brainwashed. They've been lied to. They have been shown false court orders by their father. They have been given the pink and yellow slips that CPS gives so that they can hand deliver them to their schools themselves after they've been able to read. They've had to jump fences to avoid me. They have had to endure forensic interviews sexually by false claims being made. And that's, to me, I feel the absolute worst. They have memories imprinted that are not true. There was one time, one of my daughters, when I was trying to go see them at school for lunch, she came up and she acted odd, and one of her friends says, "Who's this?" And she turns around and she goes, "That's my mom." And her friend goes, "I thought you told me your mom was dead." They've been told that they had other moms. Their stepmom was their mom, that I was not. When my ex dated a new individual after that stepmom, they said, "We're getting a new mom," when I was standing right there. They have been kept away from me for years on end. Currently, my oldest daughter has been kept away from me. I have not seen or heard from her in 6 months right now for mental health issues. Anytime she has been to the hospital or to see a counselor, I am not privy to that information. There's sporting events I've been isolated from. I have been bad-mouthed to the community. I don't like showing my face in the community where I live. I hated going to the schools, still do. I hate going to the games because of it. I don't even get to, at this point, know who the coaches' names are or what associations they're affiliated with. I've been isolated from it all. Man, I could go on and on. My children have called the police on me. I can't even. "10 years of this. There's not enough that I can say about everything that I've gone through with it. Some of it I can't even remember because it's so traumatizing that you yourself block it out. You have to protect your own mental health at times because it's so bad. I've had one daughter run away so many times, and she has said that her father has done this, that, and the other, which is sexually motivating and gratifying, but nothing has been done because it's a civil matter. Notify CPS. CPS comes out, they investigate it. They let the opposing party know that they're coming to talk to the children, and opposing party has time to coach the children what to say. I no longer trust the system. I no longer trust the judge or lawyers or anybody who says that they can help me. All I can do at this point where my children are at is continue to fight, continue to show up per my court orders, continue to document, and take care of my mental health with it all. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And there are so many times I want to run away and hide and not be there. Their sporting events are a huge, huge issue for me because I'm alone. My family does not live close by. I have a partner in life that I love him to death. And when he can, he's there with me. But the majority of the time he can't because the hours that he works. You lose your friends and your family in this fight. You lose your credibility. You can only cry wolf so many times, and you're not crying wolf. But the community and the public see that. And they just say, oh, well, you're just using this as a silver bullet, or you're doing this just to make a jab and a stab at your ex. You're deadbeat. You're not there. You're not paying anything. You're not doing anything beneficial. You're not even being teen mom. You're not getting involved. There are things I can and can't do. There are limits that I have to put and draw a line in the sand on. And, you know, I've learned to draw my line in the sand that I can't be around my ex. It causes me too much trauma. He was my abuser. Whether he's abusing my children or not, he was my abuser. And I know he's abusive towards my children. There's no way I can prove that until my children speak up for themselves and open their own eyes to see it. And at this point in their life, they're either too scared or they don't want to change what's going on because they're being told two different stories. And they should never be told that. The courts put in there a Children's Bill of Rights to guide individuals, you know, not to say something negative. That's still going to happen. It's not going to not happen. And some people just have that people speak, and I am not one of those. And I'm okay with that. But I'm a fighter, so I will never stop fighting for them. Texas Penal Code Interference with Child Custody 25.03 is a subchapter of a family code. And within that chapter, it clearly states that regardless of what an individual officer or an individual lawyer or CPS or any of the other agencies associated with, it is a criminal matter. It's a state jail felony. when I first learned about 2503 was I was a part of a group, a support group I love dearly. And the woman behind it, she's just to me a pioneer. And she's the reason I learned about parental alienation, what the word meant. And I'm a researcher. I dive. I go down, I'm Alice, and I go into that wonderland and I dive and I study and I learn, and I want to know the breakdown behind it and the psychology with it. And I was not seeing my children during that time as much as I was trying to. My ex was refusing. I'd be 3 minutes late because I was working and got stuck in traffic, and I'd be 3 minutes late. And because I was 3 minutes late, my ex would not hand over the children. He would take them, go eat dinner somewhere, hide. And I'd call the police and I'd say, I need a report. And they'd go and they'd bang on the door. They'd call him, no answer. At one point, he even had his attorney on the phone saying, no, the judge ordered her not to call police. The judge cannot order you to not contact law enforcement when there is a criminal matter going on. The judge cannot order that. In fact, that's incredibly wrong and against civil rights. So, for a period of time, naive me did not know that. And I wasn't contacting the police until I learned that. And I learned all of that right before I started working in corrections. And then I really learned how legal terms are written by going through school to get certified as a correctional officer. And man, let me tell you what, that opened my eyes in regards to that. And so I remember coming home, rushing to my computer, getting online to be on this support group. And it was like my very first support group meeting. I was really excited and really stoked because I'd been reading about this female and I watched her documentary that she was a part of. Strength, the will, and she still didn't have, like, her children had aged out, and she was still fighting for everybody. And I was like, that is just a heart of gold right there. And it wasn't just women she was fighting for men. She was fighting for, and really it was the children is what she was fighting for. And her husband was on the line and she wasn't there, and I was a little disappointed because she wasn't there, but started talking about my story, and he interjected me and he goes, Miranda, there's a group. Have you heard about 25.03? And I said, no. And he goes, well, here's a group. And he goes, check into it. And I did. And that's when I learned all about it. And I started studying it and everything. And I loved the group. And it opened my eyes to a world. So I started documenting every single time. I went on to texaslawhelp.org and printed out a letter, and I FedExed it overnight to my ex-husband saying, it was a form Texas Law Help has that saying, I'm going to be coming to take possession of my children as per the court order. And I sent that so that way I have it documented within the court as well. And you know, started documenting, and each incident I would call police every time that my children weren't where they were supposed to be, every time. And it was a ring around. And it was, I want to say, a good year and a half of doing that. And I was finally able to get an attorney who forced them to handing over the children. And it was my ex and his attorney just wanting to be controlling, isolating your children from that parent. How do you do that? And, you know, it's easy, it's simple. They're called silver bullets for a reason. I ended up having to go into the women's shelter. I was there for a total of 3 weeks with my 3 daughters. We were blessed enough to have our own room because I had so many children. And they commended me on being one of the very few to immediately go out and get a job. And that was working at a storage facility and, you know, being able to find an apartment. And I did that. And I struggled. And it wasn't enough money for daycare. And it wasn't enough money for, you know, even paying my rent. But I did it. I made it work. At one point, I was working 3 jobs. And I made it work. And I fought and I fought and I fought. And my ex-husband started following me. He was popping my tires at one point. He would have the nails, the screws waiting for me in these little blocks of wood. And he knew where I drove up at every single time. And he'd have them sitting up there. And it took like the 3rd time, because I kept saying, I think my ex-husband is doing this. Like, it doesn't make sense. Why are my tires low? You know, because I would have to drive an hour back to my house because I had to move away so he wasn't constantly following me. And he gave me this sense of paranoia. It only escalated. And he was married. He had been remarried at this time. And he would, when I'd pick up the children, he'd follow me. And when I drop them off, he had those things waiting for me. And I don't know if his intention was just to cause harm, bodily harm to me somehow, you know, by popping 2 tires, or was it to cause me to spend more money I didn't have? Was it, I don't know his mentality, his state of mind behind it. Regardless, it wasn't called for. And I was frustrated. You get frustrated, you act out sometimes, and your emotions, especially as a woman, a female, your emotions are so big when it comes to your children, and you wear your heart on your sleeve for them, and you do anything and everything you could for them, and you're fighting for your life, you're fighting for them, and you're struggling financially, and nobody in the community is believing you, and you're made out to be a crazy person. You really kind of start to believe that you are crazy when you're not. It's all what is the word? Situational. It's all situational. And it would make anybody go crazy. That's why there's so many fathers who are taking their lives. I can't tell you how many psychological exams I've been through just to prove, hey, I'm not crazy. I'm just got big emotions and big feelings for my children. And what parent shouldn't have that? What parent shouldn't love their children to the moon and back, infinity times infinity and beyond, and be that rock for them? And they need more fighters, and they don't need us to be divided. They need us to be united. And that's why I fell in love with needing equal shared parenting, which I had. I had a 50-50 custody plan. And that's how my ex-husband was able to worm his way in and completely take away almost all of my rights. And he keeps trying and continues to try. And we're under temporary joint custody orders now. And it's been that way since at least 2017, actually before. He had, in 15, he had the children taken away from me by CPS. And I went through the whole family protocol. And when the caseworker said, okay, it's time to go back to 50-50 shared parenting, you know, Miranda has completed all the steps. She's gone through flying colors. And I did that while holding 2 jobs. And I had to have supervised visits and days with them in regards to that. And but I did it. I mean, I completed it all, and it was all something that should have never gone to CPS for. And it happened, and that was the worst time of my life, when my children were taken away from me by CPS. And CPS, it's amazing the way CPS works, because CPS will have an initial investigator come out and they talk to that initial person, and then whether that investigator has children or not, they get an idea implanted in their head about the opposing party, and they should remain biased, and they don't always do. And this one particular investigator wasn't, and she put me through family programming, and the family programmer saw the difference. And when she said that, my ex-husband took me back to court, and the judge ordered for everything to remain status quo, which meant that I only got to see my children for very little. The thing with that and the police officers is they're only creating more interference, because they don't understand the law. They see it as civil. Their agencies will see it as civil, and they will only do what the district attorney says. They will not go and arrest immediately, which is not what I don't think any parent is asking for, unless it becomes an issue that continually happens. I have books this thick, actually probably thicker than that, of police reports, of my text messages back and forth, of each and every time an officer has come out, just so that I have it documented for court. The one incident where my ex-husband had my child jump the back fence to his house onto a busy road. And then I left to drive across the freeway to go home after the police had been out, because he came out of the front of the house, got in his truck, and drove off like the kids weren't there, and avoided police before they came out. And on my way home, I see my children at the park playing, and it's my period of possession. I call the police back up. Police come out. My ex-husband is running to his truck with the children, trying to avoid police and everything like that. And I'm treated, and I'm crying because I'm just want to see my children. I just want to hug them and love on them and kiss them and tell them mom's here. You know, I'm not dead. I'm not a deadbeat. I'm not any of that. And, you know, luckily when I would go to the school and have lunch with the children at the school, I was able to turn that narrative around to some extent within the school when they saw me coming and interacting and, you know, trying and being a part of it. But did I get the same emails that my ex-husband did because he was the primary parent? No. Did I get the school report, the report card, or anything that was sent home to my children in their backpacks? No. Did I get to know about the AR meetings? Few and far between, but really, no. If you're withholding a child from the other parent, regardless, you are not a good parent. And it's so easy for the alienator to become the alienated as well. I just fight for my children. I want to fight for all children. I want to be one of those people that I help stop it and say, hold up, let's take a step back. Let's look at the bigger picture here. Let's try and find a way to get the entire community involved. You know, let's not just educate police officers, lawyers, judges. Let's educate schools, doctors, psychologists, counselors, therapists, life coaches. Let's educate them all, because it's a community-wide thing. It's always been said, it takes a village to raise a child. We're that village. For those cities, you know, as many people that can come together, that have come together for all the injustices over the past 2, 3, 4 years, we can have that same amount of people. We can have more than that, because all of us are parents or a child. I so wish and hope that we could all just get along, but it's just not the case. And the judges continue and with this path, and till we get everybody on the same page and we make a lot of noise, nothing is going to change. And at this point, I feel like I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to keep calling the police. I'm going to keep writing my reports. I'm going to keep documenting until my children age out of the system. And I know for a fact that one child, one of my children, she's a fighter, but she's not ready to fight until she can step away completely from her father. Parental alienation, it comes at you from everywhere. From everywhere. Everybody is a part of it. Everybody's involved, whether they want to say they are or not. You know, the majority of people have the best intentions and they try, but until you are there, you do not know. It is when your children are ripped away from you and they are living, breathing bodies. It is like a death has happened in the family, and you still have to live and maintain your life and go on as if they have not died. And you have no closure. You don't have that burial service. You don't have that last conversation. You don't get that last hug or kiss or cuddle. I got stuck in this situation to where I was cut off, and my children, I still see them as being 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and wanting to be, take that toddler and hold and love on them and care for them deeply and show my love. But now my love has to be something different. I have to show them a different way. And my love for them right now is, I know, honey, you don't want to be with me. I know you think I'm a bad parent. I know that you hate me. And I know that deep down that hate really isn't there. You do love me, but I'm going to continue to fight for you. I'm going to continue to do that, because at the end of the day, when you become an adult, when you become a parent, or if this ever happens to you, because it can happen to anyone, I want you to know that mom never stopped fighting. Mom never stopped trying. When you become an adult and you are able to have that conversation with me and tell me, Mom, just back off, please, I will. It's going to be hard for me, but I will, because I will respect you at that point in time as an adult when I know that you're making that decision cognitively. Right now, there's too many implanted memories. There's too many, coaching sessions from other people, too many lies that have been said. But at the end of the day, when my life is gone and done, I will have everything documented, and it'll be left for you to see and for you to make the decision yourself. And I pray and I hope to God that you can come to the right conclusion and decision and know which parent was really the one fighting for you and which parent was really the one keeping you. Because I haven't been given the opportunity to not take you to your sport game. I haven't been given the opportunity to fail you in those matters. They've been failed for me. It's like playing a board game and somebody cheating and you feeling jilted because somebody cheated and won something. It's the same thing. Same thing in parental alienation.
As I listen to the stories and I see how the judges mistreat parents, how the courts mistreat parents that are going in there to actually fight for the right to be in their children's lives, I think that's the key here. It happens to parents that are trying to be in their children's lives, loving parents. I'm not talking about the ones that disappeared for a while, then come back 10 years later and want to be involved, never saw them. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about a father or mother that love their children, that are good citizens in society, and they're harassed. They're harassed within the court systems. There's no fable for that. It's not a lie. Something that happens. Listen, I can tell you a story right now. When I was during my divorce, we went so many times before the judge. There was only 3 times that my ex-wife showed up. She shows up in this one case, and I had been there sitting down, because they tell you to be there at 8 o'clock. I was there at 8 o'clock sitting down. 8:30 turns around, the judge was still not at the bench. About 9 o'clock, people are moving in and out, and I'm still sitting down by myself. I stayed away from everybody. I was sitting in one corner of the pews, and she comes in. I saw her in the far left, and she literally makes it to the point that she gets right in front of the pew in front of me, and literally starts discussing and bitching at me. I stayed quiet. I ignored her. And here comes the bailiff. The bailiff was somehow related to me. You know, she was one of these women that wish they had a mustache bigger than mine, and literally comes out and starts blaming me for an argument that I was trying to ignore. Okay? She takes my ex by the hand, goes and sits her down across the path where she was at. When my name is called, that bailiff stands up and tells the judge in front of the court, in front of everybody, basically lied that I was starting an argument. My attorneys didn't stand up and say anything otherwise. I tried to correct them, and I tried to say that was not the case. But guess what happened? The burning of a father that he was arguing an utter lie by a peace officer of a court that's supposed to have some type of integrity. Issues like this occur all the time. These types of elements in courts, judges giving people high fives, judges caught at dinner with the opposing counsel, happens regularly. Folks, you need to understand one thing. It's happening to parents that want to be in their children's lives. So what does it tell you? It tells you this, that we're doing something right, and they're stopping that from continuing.